the JF-17 Thunder.
I love Pakistan! I will sacrifice my life for Pakistan! I love Pakistan!
Join me as I build Trumpeter's incorrect but still bloody good rendition of a plane with world's least threatening name. Ooh, look at me, I'm about to be shot down by a Jeff. Grow up. Like so many others, this build started with the cockpit. The instructions paint callouts were pretty shit, so after looking at some photos, I opted to use a generic light grey for the main cockpit tub and whatnot, black on the ejection seat, and a sort of medium-ish green on the cockpit sidewalls, which is probably only accurate for a really early Jeff, but fortunately, that's what this kit is, so nyeh. The cockpit tub has some slight raised bits to indicate where the control panels on the side consoles go, but no switches or dials. The way the cockpit decals are designed are such that they're black and cover the side consoles in their entirety, which is wrong, but this can easily be rectified by trimming them down to just the control panels. The decals for the instrument panel have a ridiculous amount of excess carrier film and just generally aren't sized properly, so those needed a bit of a chop and a trim too. I still maintain that flat cockpits that rely entirely on decals are cringe as fuck, but you can at least sort of make this one work. That said, the fact that the kit has a photo etch fret and doesn't use any of it for that is a bit perplexing. But hey, if you want seatbelts, they got that. And glare shields? And the HUD? Oh no. To say that putting the HUD together was difficult would be understatement of the millennium. I would make some really disgusting comparison about how painful and unfun I found it, like, I don't know, feeding my dick through a deli slicer, but that would actually be pleasurable in some circumstances. Using super glue that isn't like half a year past its use by date might help, but the option of a simplified one-piece clear part would have helped a lot more. I believe this is a holdover from the 48th scale version of this kit, and in a larger scale would probably be still endlessly frustrating but at least actually possible. Thankfully, general construction is much better. The cockpit tub goes into the nose section halves very snugly, with a very defined and pronounced fit. Said nose halves have Hasegawa Eurofighter disease, where you've got a weird mismatch of contact areas between top and bottom, so getting the profile correct is a bit annoying, but still eminently doable. The fuselage is split into top and bottom, like you'd see on just about any F-16 kit, but unlike those, the nose section is separate. The best way I found to do it was gluing the nose to the top half, waiting for that to dry, and then sliding the bottom bit in. There's a fair bit of small gap on the bottom side, but the match between the profile of the nose and the fuselage is absolutely spot on. Also, it's probably a good idea to paint the air intakes before gluing everything together. Guess how I know. The vertical stabilizer goes together in two parts, but you wouldn't know that by looking at the final model. And it goes onto its place on the fuselage with a hole, a peg, and the plane's entire spine as a locating feature. You always hear me banging on and on about, oh, the fit's vague or butt joins that, or whatever. This is the absolute opposite of that. This is the best fitting kit I have ever built. After putting everything together, all that's left was a quick bit of filling and sanding. Didn't record any of it, but it also didn't take all that long because of how well this kit's designed, so you get to watch footage of me priming it instead. While I was waiting for the primer to cure, I worked on the things under wings. The kit gives you a fairly narrow range of options, just drop tanks, PL-5E2s, PL-15s, and PL-9s, although I haven't found any photographic evidence that those are actually used by Pakistan on their JF-17s, so probably not PL-9s. You do get a bunch of decals for everything, including the pylons, so that's pretty epic at least. It would have been nice to maybe get some Chinese air-to-ground weaponry, like LS-6s or C-701s, but what you do get allows you to build a standard service loadout that you can fairly easily find photos of, so it's all swings and roundabouts I guess. Also, the fuel tanks are completely wrong for the Pakistani Air Force, but we're just gonna ignore that. Before painting, I put the landing gears on. These aren't quite as good as the rest of the kit, with the nose landing gear sort of just sitting somewhere on world's smallest ledge on the sides of the gear bay, and the main landing gears having to go in a very specific angle, but then locating with a simple circular hole and peg. Credit where it's due, it's a bit less of an issue once you've put the relevant struts on, which I didn't record doing because I'm so good at making videos, because they fit really quite definitively and sort of pull the main landing gears into place. Painting was mildly interesting because nobody but Pakistan knows what colours these things are. The instructions call out light and dark ghost grey, which as far as Trumpeter and its associated sub-brands go, might as well be bang on. Caracal Models decal sheet recommends FS36495 for the lighter tone and light ghost grey for the darker tone. Comparing either option to photos of the real thing, neither really satisfied me, so I went for a secret, more nuanced third option of Vallejo Sky Grey, which fits the fairly neutral but slightly cool light grey the Jeff has going on, and Vallejo Light Grey, which is honestly fairly close to dark ghost grey but different, and it's as close as I can be bothered getting to the actual colour without having to exert any actual effort. As to what that maps to in any other paint range, figure it out yourself, must I do everything for you? Apart from the fact that the finish was a bit grainy due to it being absurdly humid when I primed the model, this was relatively quite straightforward. After the gloss, I moved on to the decals. This kit comes with 3 schemes. Going in chronological order, the first is PT-04, the first JF-17 prototype to incorporate many elements of the production Jeff. Most notably, the divertless supersonic air intakes, enlarged leading edge extensions, and all the fancy 4th gen avionics that a 4th gen fighter generally needs to be considered 4th gen. 4th gen! It should be noted that Trumpeter does offer a version of this kit covering the earlier prototypes if you want to be all eclectic about it. Second is 07-101, the first of 2 JF-17s to be delivered to Pakistan from China in March of 2007. As you can see, it's been done up in a display livery representing the partnership between these 2 countries. From what I can tell, it may or may not still be in service, as there are photos as recent as 2023 showing it flying alongside Jeff's made in 2022. Lastly, and the one I went with, 07-102. You'll never guess when this one was delivered to Pakistan. This represents a fairly standard in-service Jeff, although since 2007, the PAF has changed the font of the numbers on the nose and tail, which is a fun little tedious observation. This plane, as depicted in the kit, also predates squadron markings by a few years, so you'd have to go aftermarket if you want those. It might generally be worth going aftermarket because the kit decals do have a noticeable blue cast to them, but I reckon if you paint the lightning bolt on the nose like I did rather than using the decal, it doesn't look too offensively terrible. Other than that, the decals are cromulent and behaved as expected. The placement guide was a bit wonky and incomplete in some areas, but nothing I'm prepared to go on a half-hour long AVGN style rant about. After that, I decided to work on the exhaust. The kit gives you the option of a somewhat depressing looking plastic exhaust nozzle, or making one out of photo etch. I gave the latter option a go, but ended up making an absolute pig's ear of it. When you roll the 2 sort of inner rings into circles separately, as the instructions suggest, they end up being too big and just don't fit together. I attempted to glue them together and then roll them, and this proved a bit easier if you ignore the completely fucked alignment on the pedals. I had a similar problem but with the outer circle bits, so that required even more fiddling and finagling, and then by the time I had gotten everything into the main outer ring, I had managed to knock off just about all of the pedals on one of the inner rings, and it just looked a bit disastrous and terrible and fucked up beyond repair. This is possible to do. I have seen builds where people have done it. Hell, I was almost, but not quite able to do it. But if you choose to go for the photo etch exhausts, I'd recommend taking a week off work to do it, because you'll need all the patience and care in the world to do it without inadvertently snapping everything off. Either that or buy a resin exhaust, I don't know, I'm not the police. In other news, oil paints. I decided to try doing things vaguely differently this time, so after watching 2.5 seconds of a Microneldi video and buying actually decent student grade oil paints, I proceeded to move on to weathering. My technique here is sort of a bit like oil paint rendering, but in the edited down 20-minute OPR videos, Rinaldi mainly just talks about OPR like some sort of time hero life coaching course, so I really can't be too sure. The short of it was, working in sections, I brushed some white spirits onto the surface of the model, dabbed on some white and buff where I wanted it to go, still put it with a brush very lightly dampened in white spirits, and then sort of did the same thing but with a mix of Payne's Grey and Burnt Umber. You'd want the darker paints to be a tad thinner just so they're a bit more transparent and less likely to be a complete and utter mess after blending. I also tried to focus the darker colours in choice areas based on reference photos I've collected, as opposed to doing it fully overall, but I accidentally did end up doing it sort of fully overall anyways. Oops. Either way, after hacking up along and promptly dying due to overdosing on white spirits, I was left with something that I didn't completely hate. In some areas, it even looks like it was done by somebody who actually knew what they were doing. I did more or less the same on the underside, but I had to use my old crap Kmart oil paints because I thought I'd be smart and subversive and buy Payne's Grey and Van Dyke Brown instead of black and burnt umber, which was a bit of a mistake because the former is pretty good for washes but too blue for anything else, and the latter is comically red. This means that it all looks a bit rougher, but such is life. But after all that, it was simply a matter of putting all the things under wings and small bits on, and I could finally call my build of Trumpeter's JF-17 done. Given what this kit has to offer, you know, stuff like photo etch and missiles and actually good fit, you'd probably expect this to cost several $1,000s. You would in fact be wrong though. This can easily be found for 35 smackaroos. 35 big ones, that's it! Pi to the power of 3.100931148 units of currency. Utterly mental. To be clear, it's not a perfect kit. There are a fair few glaring inaccuracies, namely the drop tanks and some missing decals, so it's by no means the most definitive JF-17 kit out there. But it's the only JF-17 kit out there in 72nd scale, so it's not like you have much of a choice. This kit punches so far above its weight, it's genuinely comical. It's impulse buy territory. It's the same price as a lot of Italy's ancient overpriced shovelware. It's $15 cheaper than Airfix's utterly pestilential Harrier GR1. You can spend $60 and still get a kit with tolerances as wide as the continental United States. This is genuinely the best value for money kit I've ever built, and I'd strongly recommend you go out and get one. Even if you exclusively build tanks or whatever, go and buy it, or else I'm finding where you live and bending all the spoons in your cutlery drawer just enough for it to be annoying.